The text from my ex-husband lit up my phone at 2 a.m. I made the biggest mistake of my life. It read, "Funny how being left for the company's receptionist didn't feel like a mistake to him 7 months ago. Now his perfect new life is crumbling, and I'm thriving." Before I tell you how my millionaire ex-husband went from treating me like yesterday's trash to begging for one more chance, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the moment he realizes exactly what he threw away. 8 years. That's how long I spent building what I thought was the perfect life with James. We met in college, him with his ambitious business plans, me with my accounting degree and big dreams. His enthusiasm was infectious. When he talked about building his tech company, his eyes lit up with a fire that made me believe anything was possible. I still remember our tiny apartment when we first got married. The leaky faucet, the creaky floors, and that ridiculous futon that doubled as our couch and bed. But we were happy. I'd stay up late with him, crunching numbers, refining business proposals, cold calling potential investors. While he pitched the vision, I quietly managed the backbone of everything: organizing finances, scheduling meetings, networking with the right people. We were a team. And then it happened. His first major contract. I'd never seen him so excited as when he burst through the door that night, champagne in hand. "We did it, baby. We're on our way." He twirled me around our cramped kitchen, and in that moment, everything felt worth it. The late nights, the ramen dinners, the vacations we never took. It was all part of our journey. As the business grew, so did our life together. The tiny apartment became a condo, then finally our dream home. That modern masterpiece overlooking the city that I spent months designing to be perfect for entertaining clients. I handpicked every detail from the marble countertops to the custom lighting fixtures. Our home became our showcase, the physical embodiment of our success story. I handled the books, managed client relations, and hosted dinner parties where I'd subtly steer conversations toward new opportunities for James. Behind every contract he signed was hours of my research, my planning, my support. I was the invisible foundation that made his spotlight possible. And I was happy with that arrangement. His success was our success, or so I thought. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The late nights at the office that grew more frequent. The business trips that somehow required his new receptionist to attend. The way his phone would mysteriously turn face down whenever I entered the room. The subtle shift in how he'd tense up when I asked about his day. But when you're living inside a perfect picture, it's hard to notice the frame starting to crack. Then came that Tuesday night. I wasn't snooping, honestly. His phone buzzed while he was in the shower, and I glanced down out of habit. That's when I saw her message. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for more." My hands trembled as I confronted James that night. His text messages to Amber lighting up the screen between us. I remember his face, not shock or guilt, but something worse, relief. "I didn't want you to find out this way," he said with this strange calmness that chilled me to the bone. No denial, no apology, just the cold, calculated demeanor of a man who'd already made his decision long before I discovered the truth. Amber, his 22-year-old receptionist with the perfect Instagram feed and Daddy's trust fund. The girl who'd been in our home, smiled to my face, accepted the job I'd helped interview her for. She was practically a child compared to us, 15 years younger than him, still posting party pics while we were building an empire. "I've outgrown this marriage," he told me over breakfast 3 days later, like he was discussing a change in our internet provider. "Amber understands the man I've become, the man I want to be." The diamond-crusted watch I'd given him for our anniversary glinted on his wrist as he spoke the words that demolished 8 years of us. The divorce papers arrived at my office, in the company I helped build. The ultimate humiliation, as whispers spread through departments, colleagues averting their eyes in the hallway. Some had known for months. The settlement was brutal. Everything was in his name. The house, the cars, even my retirement account had somehow been moved into a business asset. His lawyer was thorough. Mine was outmatched. I found myself with barely enough to cover 3 months' rent on a studio apartment. I packed my life into boxes while scrolling through their vacation photos in Bali, the trip we'd planned to take for our 10th anniversary. There she was, flashing the 5-carat ring on the beach where we were supposed to renew our vows. The caption read, "When you know, you know. Forever starts now." The day I moved out, he didn't even show up, just sent his assistant with the paperwork for my final signatures. 8 years reduced to a manila envelope and a sympathy coffee from a stranger. That night, alone on a rented mattress in an empty apartment across town, I listened to the rain against unfamiliar windows and wondered how I'd become so disposable to someone who once couldn't sleep without me beside him. I'd never known silence could be so loud until those first weeks alone. My new apartment was 1/5 the size of our home, with walls thin enough to hear my neighbor's TV through them. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that vaguely resembled Australia, wondering how someone builds a life from scratch at 36. The crying became a nightly ritual, sometimes quiet tears while cooking dinner for one. Other times, soul-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air on the bathroom floor. I'd scroll through photos of our past, torturing myself with memories that now felt like elaborate lies. Had he ever really loved me? Had any of it been real? 3 weeks in, while unpacking a box I'd been avoiding, I found it. A leather portfolio containing the original business plan I'd written for James's company. Page after page of my handwriting, my research, my vision. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the remnants of my old life, something shifted inside me. This company that had made him millions hadn't been his brainchild alone. It had been mine too. The next morning, I made 2 decisions. I started therapy, and I registered my own business domain. If I could build an empire for him, I could build one for myself. I reached out to Sarah, an old client who'd always respected my work behind the scenes. "I always wondered why you weren't running your own shop," she said over coffee. James got the better end of that deal. She became my first client. My therapist helped me untangle years of putting his dreams before mine. "You've been the architect of someone else's success," she told me. "Imagine what you could build if you directed that energy toward yourself." Those words became my mantra on the hardest days. I worked 18-hour days, building my consulting business from my tiny kitchen table. Each small victory felt enormous. My first contract, my first positive bank balance, my first night without crying myself to sleep. When Lisa, James's former business partner, called asking for my help with her new venture, I knew the tides were turning. 4 months after he left, I walked into a salon and cut off 10 inches of the long hair he'd always loved. As I watched it fall to the floor, I felt pounds of invisible weight lifting from my shoulders. The woman in the mirror was someone new, someone stronger, someone entirely her own. 6 months after moving into that tiny apartment, I signed the papers on my new home. Nothing extravagant, a modern 2-bedroom condo downtown. But it was mine. Bought with money I had earned myself. As I stood alone in the empty living room, keys in hand, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: pride. Not the borrowed pride of being someone's wife or the architect of someone else's success, but genuine pride in what I had built for myself. My consulting business had taken off beyond my wildest expectations. Turns out, I wasn't just good at supporting someone else's vision. I was brilliant at creating my own. 3 former clients of James's had switched to my firm, impressed with the detailed attention I brought to their accounts. "You were always the brains behind the operation," one told me over lunch. He just had the fancy suits and the handshake. When Business Insider included me in their Entrepreneurs to Watch feature, my phone exploded with congratulatory messages, and one particularly satisfying text from James's business partner. "He's spiraling. Thought you should know." The rumors started trickling in through mutual connections. James's company was floundering without my behind-the-scenes management. He'd lost the Westridge account, a client I'd personally nurtured for years. His new partner, the infamous Amber, had expensive tastes that matched her ambitions. The Ferrari, the weekend trips to Monaco, the designer wardrobe she flaunted on social media, all draining the accounts I once balanced so carefully. Then came the stock market crash that decimated tech investments. James had always been aggressive with market plays, risks I'd quietly tempered during our marriage. Without my cautious hand, he'd overextended, leveraging assets against speculative investments that now lay in ruins. The final blow came when his business partner was indicted for embezzlement. Financial irregularities I would have spotted immediately had I still been reviewing the books. James's name wasn't directly implicated, but the company's reputation was shattered overnight. I didn't feel the vicious joy I'd expected. Instead, watching his life unravel from afar felt like observing a car crash in slow motion. Fascinating, but sobering. I was building while he was breaking. The contrast wasn't lost on our social circle, who now approached me with business proposals instead of pity. When I heard he'd been hospitalized for stress-induced chest pains, I sent a simple get well card, no message inside, just my name, my own name, not his, signed in confident strokes across the bottom. The first text came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I miss you. 3 simple words that once would have sent my heart racing, now just illuminating my bedroom ceiling as I stared at the screen, feeling nothing but mild curiosity. I didn't respond. 3 days later, I made a terrible mistake. Then, can we talk? Each message more desperate than the last, arriving at odd hours when I imagined him alone, perhaps drinking, definitely regretting. I archived them all without replying, each swipe bringing a strange sense of power I'd never felt during our marriage. A week later, flowers arrived at my office. Peonies, my favorite. The card read, "Remember our first anniversary in Chicago?" I gave the bouquet to my assistant and shredded the card. That evening, a package arrived containing the vintage watch I'd once mentioned wanting. I donated it to a charity auction the following week. At the annual Tech Industry Gala, I finally saw him in person. 7 months had carved deep lines around his eyes, added a heaviness to his frame that his expensive suit couldn't disguise. I was across the room, laughing with a potential investor, when our eyes met. He looked at me as if seeing a ghost, or perhaps the woman I'd always been beneath the supportive wife he'd taken for granted. I nodded politely and turned away. That night, the voicemails began. "You look amazing," slurred the first. "I've been so stupid," confessed the second. By the third, his voice had cracked. "She's nothing compared to you. Nothing. It was always you." I learned through mutual friends that Amber had filed for separation after discovering his financial troubles. The perfect Instagram life had crumbled when the credit cards were declined, and the truth about his company's state emerged. She'd wanted a successful businessman, not a struggling startup founder starting over. His final attempt came in the form of a handwritten letter, delivered by courier to my home. "One dinner, just to talk. I'll give you anything. The house back, shares in whatever's left of the company, anything you want. I had everything with you, and I threw it away for an illusion." I read it twice, standing in my sunlit kitchen that I'd designed myself, in the home I'd purchased with my own success. The letter felt like an artifact from another woman's life, a woman who had once defined herself by this man's approval. I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer, where it remains unopened, a reminder of how far I've come. I answered James's letter with a single text, "No thank you." 3 words that took me 8 years and a broken heart to learn how to say. The simplicity felt right. Neither cruel nor kind, just clear. I didn't want to punish him. I simply no longer wanted him in my life. The realization was as peaceful as it was powerful. People often ask if I'm bitter. The truth surprises them. I'm grateful. Grateful that he left when he did. before we had children, before I spent another decade dimming my light to make his shine brighter. His betrayal forced me to face the hardest question: who was I without him? The answer turned out to be someone far stronger, more capable, and more complete than the woman who had built her life around his dreams. My company now employs 15 people, including 2 who left James's firm for better opportunities with me. Last quarter, we exceeded our annual revenue goals. And next month, I'm speaking at the Women in Tech conference about resilience and reinvention. The irony isn't lost on me that the greatest success of my life came after what I once thought was my greatest failure. Sometimes, when I'm working late in my office, I think about that alternate universe where he never left, where I'm still maintaining his calendar, still making excuses for his absences at family events, still believing that supporting someone else's ambitions was the same as having my own. It makes me shiver. I've started dating again, cautiously. Michael is kind, accomplished in his own right, and, most importantly, sees me as a partner, not an accessory. When he asks about my work, he listens with genuine interest. When he talks about his own projects, it's with the expectation of collaboration, not support. We're building something based on mutual respect rather than dependence. It's unfamiliar territory, but it feels right. The most unexpected gift from this entire experience has been learning to trust myself again, not just in business or relationships, but in the quiet moments when it's just me, making choices that honor the woman I've become. The woman who says no thank you to anything that doesn't serve her growth. The woman who now understands that losing someone who doesn't value you is actually the universe making space for the life you deserve. So when that 2 a.m. text lit up my phone, begging for one more night, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free.